Hello, my dear adventurers, it's Fox. Welcome back to my little tavern. Tonight, our story takes us to the medieval European town of Redwycke, a small settlement on the edge of the great woods. And you are Tobias, the village blacksmith. Not so long ago, you scraped together every coin you had to buy your own forge. And it's an honest life you lead, a good one. The village folk come and go all day long, needing this mended or that made, and each of them brings a bit of their world in through your door. Some will spin you a tale while you work. Some conceal hidden motives behind their innocent requests. And every now and then, if you're lucky, a pretty lass might linger a while just to watch the sparks fly off your anvil. Your day usually starts off nice and easy, with no idea yet of where it might take you. And who knows, you might just find a bit of adventure of your own before the sun goes down. And if you like what I do here and want a way to support myself and the channel, check out my Patreon, linked down in the description. You'll find more POV stories and adventures, ad-free, and get early access to future stories. But for now, put on your blacksmithing apron, stoke the fire, get all cozy, and let's begin. Redwycke stands at the edge of the great woods, in that part of the country where the trees at last give way to open ground. Two roads meet there, the one coming down from the north, out of the greater towns and the wool country, and the other one going west, toward the river and the mills that stand upon it. It is by these two roads that everything comes to Redwycke. The wool carts and the peddlers, and the news from other places. And it is by these that everything leaves again. So that a man, sitting long enough at his door on the western road, will see, in time, the whole commerce of the town pass by him twice. It is not a large place, nor a grand one. From the northern gate to the last house on the western road is a walk of 1/4 of an hour, no more. And in that walk you would pass the market square, with its uneven cobbles and its well, and the squat church of St. Cuthbert, and the alehouse, and the house of the reeve, and the stalls that are full and loud on market days, and stand bare the rest of the week. Beyond the square, the houses nestle amidst the narrow lanes, built so close to each other, such that one may not sneeze without alerting the neighbours. And behind them are the gardens and the pig yards, and the little untidy business of living, like the outhouses. And beyond the last of the houses lie the fields. And beyond the fields, the woods, which are very old and very deep, and run on farther than anyone in Redwycke has ever had good reason to find out. Your forge stands upon the western road, a little below the square, where all the traffic toward the river must go past your door. It's a rather advantageous position for a person of your trade. The forge is a broad building of blackened stone, a great deal older than yourself, with the workshop below, and above it, the room in which you sleep. And to one side, a yard where the carts leave their loads. There is no one in Redwycke who does not know the place. It was the old smith's for 30 years, until he had racked up a considerable debt gambling at the taverns. The old man sold it for a pittance compared to its true value, and you'd sunk the entire sum of your gold, earned over the years of apprenticeship buying it. You wake a little after first light, which in the autumn is near enough to 6, when the square of the window has turned from black to the grey of pewter, and the birds have begun their trill in the woods. What wakes you this morning is neither the light nor the birds, but Juno barking down in the yard. It is her idle bark, which means a cat has got up on the wall, or a leaf has blown past her nose, and not the deeper sort she keeps for real trouble. So you don't reach for your boots just yet, instead drinking in the room around you. It is a good room and grander than the humble lodgings you grew up in. There is the chest at the foot of the bed you are slow to leave, and on a shelf against the wall where another man might keep nothing at all, 3 books stand leaning against one another. One is a treatise on husbandry, how a man should order his land and his stock and his coin. One is a book of bawdy poems you won in a foolish bet. And one, the dearest to you, talks of metals and their working, and has in it drawings you have half worn away with looking. You were taught your letters as a boy by a travelling scholar, a mild and patient man who came through Redwycke often in those years, and lodged at the alehouse, and who found in you a readiness to learn. Not many men of your trade can read. You have never been able to decide whether it has done you good or only made you restless and dangerously curious. You get up at last when drowsiness stops weighing down your eyelids. From a table in the room, you eat the end of a sausage from the night before with a heel of bread. Then you take your heavy leather apron down from its peg and put it on over your head. It's slightly scuffed, but respectable. While you eat the last of the bread, you stand at the window and look down upon the road. The miller's cart goes by toward the river, and the man upon it lifts a hand to you in easy greeting. Smoke is getting up from the chimneys along the western road, and the light is coming yellow now over the roofs opposite and down into the mud of the street. Redwycke is bathed gold in the dawn's magnificence, and for a moment it looks like the greatest settlement of the age in your eyes. You go down the narrow stair at the back, and Juno meets you at the bottom, turning about your legs as you come. The workshop is still dark in the corners, where the meagre light from the door does not reach. You see to the fire first as a smith must, kneeling at the hearth and drawing a live ember out of the ash you banked the night before, and setting it among the fresh charcoal, before working the bellows slow and easy until the heat builds up. It takes patience, but not in a bothersome way. Trying to rush the fire would only put it out. And so you crouch there in the half-dark and coax it, as Juno lies down at a careful distance with her nose upon her paws. And by degrees, the coals go from black to a red, so bright it is nearly white. The warmth of it reaches out and lays a hand upon your face. Then the forge is awake, and the day may properly begin. You have scarcely risen when the cart comes down the western road, the axle groaning and the boards knocking, and it halts at your door. It is Osbert Reed, the town's carter, sat up on the board with the reins loose in his fists, and an expression of a man greatly put upon by the world. In the bed of the cart behind him are the sacks of charcoal and iron you sent for, roped and waiting to be hauled. "Many thanks, Osbert," you say to him, and hand him a coin for his troubles. "Nay, bother, and it's all there. I counted it twice on the way, so nobody can say old Osbert's a thief." The carter replies in a rough voice, clearly still sour over the time a couple sacks had fallen off during his deliveries around the village, and a merchant accused him of being a scoundrel skimming off the goods. "Nobody's saying that, Osbert," you placate him. Then it's time to carry the sacks in, which is your work, however, and not his. Osbert brings a delivery to your door and counts his duty done the moment the wheels stop turning. He swings off the seat and pats his horse's neck, then leans against the cart for a rest. The charcoal sacks are easier and lighter, so you start with them. Though the dust gets into everything, the creases of your hands and the corners of your eyes, and the back of your throat, so that you'll taste the morning's work until noon. The iron is another matter. You lift the sacks one at a time across your shoulder, feeling the strain on your forearms and the buckle of your knees, and carry them into the forge, stacking them along the wall. By the fifth trip, the sweat runs freely under your tunic. Osbert watches from outside without stirring a finger, and offers now and then a word on how a load ought to be lifted, and why you ought to heave with your legs. When the last of it has been cleared, he clicks his tongue at his horse and goes off up the road, toward the square for the remainder of his rounds, whistling a tune. You stand in the emptied yard and get your breath. It is not yet the middle of the morning, and already there is honest work behind you. You wipe your face with the flat of your arm and go back in to begin. You have the fire hot and the first bar heating, when a shadow falls across the doorway, and you hear a soft knock on the frame as you raise your head to greet your first customer of the day. "Pleasant morrow, Master Blacksmith," the woman says, and you incline your head in polite response. You know her, though not very well. It's Julietta, the woodcutter's wife. She'd come to Redwycke some years ago from somewhere in the south, and had married Otto Oakley within the very same season, which had given the village folk much to talk about, and which they sometimes talked about still when gossip was dry. She is but a few years older than yourself, with a slight frame and a gentle, if guarded, demeanour. "I've come to trouble you for an axe for my husband. The old one has split past mending, and there is yet wood to cut for the winter ahead," she requests, stepping into the warmth of the forge. You nod understandingly and feel glad for an easy commission at the early hour. "Aye," A felling axe is simple enough. And how is your husband these days? You ask, because it is civil to do so. Oh, he is abed, on account of hurting his leg a fortnight back in the woods. She hesitates for a beat, then continues. A branch fell on it, and he's not the strength to make the journey here. If you please, Master Tobias, forge the axe with a heavy head and sharpen it finely. He's deep in the trees at this time of the season, more often than not, and a long way from anyone. Wolves come through there, and a good axe by his side is sure to be a boon. You study her carefully. What Julieta speaks is true. Wolves do come through past the shallows of the tree line. And so do the king's deer, which is a different matter. And Otto is in those woods from dark to dark. More days than is reasonably needed to collect an honest share of wood. You've long suspected his poaching, and you'd bet a good deal of villagers know it too. But it has never once been your business. The king has deer he will never count, and the people who've no trade to ply must get by somehow. The poachers are answerable to God, and not to you or to the guardsmen, who are likely no less dishonest themselves. You take up a stick of chalk and mark the weight and the length of the axe on the benchboard, so you won't misremember it. I'll be glad to make it for 2 silver, but it'll be a morning's work, so if you've any errands to run, I ought to be done by noon, you say, and hope that she'll find the price agreeable. Julieta gives no protest, and says she'll be back once she's done at the tailor's and at the market. She heads out, and you turn back to work on your first order of the day. You choose your stock from the barrel of metals, a good square length with no flaw you can see, and set it into the heart of the fire. The bellows breathe under your arm. The coals sink from orange to a deep glowing red, and the iron buried in them, which started sullen and dark, heats to the colour of yellow straw, which lets you know it's ready. You lift it out on the tongs and lay it to the anvil. Blacksmithing is not a gentle art, but it is beautiful all the same. You lift the hammer, and it comes down in a ringing blow. The metal gives little by little under each stroke, flattening where you want it flat, lengthening where you want it long. Black scale jumps off the surface at every blow, and skitters away hot across the anvil and the floor. You turn the bar and strike again, and turn it back, easing the shape out of it the way you were taught. The head broadens, and the pole thickens at the back. The colour fades as you work, and the iron stiffens under the hammer. So you carry it back to the fire and bury it again, and stand a moment with your hand on the bellows while it drinks the heat once more. Your shoulder finds the rhythm, and you hum a song that helps you with the momentum. Ring after ring of hard blows, and the lighter tap after it as the hammer bounces. The sweat gathers at your brow and runs down along your nose. When a rivulet comes loose and drops, it vanishes on the hot iron. You wipe your eyes on your shoulder without stopping. The eye of the axe wants the most care, as it's the hole where the haft will seat. You punch it through, with 3 heavy blows from one side and then the other to meet them. Then knock the slug out and open it with the drift until it runs true. A crooked eye is a danger to the man who wields the axe, and a shame on the man who made it. You fit a haft from the seasoned ones racked by the door, and take the axe to the grindstone, sharpening it until it will part the hair on your arm. Then you stand it against the bench and look over your work. It is well made, and will last Otto several seasons. His luck evading the king's justice for poaching will likely catch up to him sooner than this axe would fail him. The sun is high in the sky now, and the light settles upon your face almost uncomfortably. Giulietta returns a little after noon, with a basket on her arm and a wrapped bundle from the tailor beneath it. You hand her the axe. She takes it in both hands and turns it over once, then lays her palm flat under the head to weigh it, and finally tucks it into the basket between the cabbages and apples. "He'll be pleased," she says, and hands over the 2 silver, with a few copper extra for the fine work. God keep you, Blacksmith. You have not long set the workshop to rights after Giulietta's leaving, when you hear a second customer approach. There is the clop of a good horse on the road, and a voice raised in song about a knight and a maiden fair. The singing stops as you hear a dignified grunt of dismounting, and then the doorway fills with a large man who ducks his head to come in. A man of his height and stature would be impressive even in a commoner's hose and tunic, but it is clear he's no mere peasant. He's dressed in fine plate armor and a cream surcoat with an embroidered coat of arms. He looks to be in his 50s, but he carries the age well, with a finely trimmed moustache and neatly groomed hair, and his hand rests upon the gilded pommel of a beautiful sword. He is beaming at you as though you were an old friend he had crossed the sea to find. God give you good day, honest smith. Sir Ludolph Musgrave at your service and God's. He presses a hand to his heart and inclines his head in a small bow, the sort a great man gives to show he is too humble to withhold, even from a tradesman. I am told, up and down this road, that you are the finest hand with iron in the shire. Do not deny it. Modesty is a virtue, yes, but I have no patience for it in another man when I am in a hurry. It pleases me to know the townsfolk speak so highly of me. You say honestly, "What is it you need, my lord?" "A horseshoe. A simple request for a man of your talents, I'm sure. But not a fair one, good smith. A blessed one." He comes further in, filling the shop, and Juno lifts her head to look at him and thinks better of barking. You will have heard there is to be racing in the water meadows come St. Luke's Day. Horses from 4 counties, a purse and a wreath, and the eyes of every lady of quality for a day's ride around. He deepens his voice in a show of great confidence. Well, I aim to win it. A worthy aim, my lord, you respond. It is more than an aim, Smith. It is a certainty, if only the small matters are seen to. And the smallest matter, which is to say the greatest, is this. he unslings from his shoulder a leather satchel and draws from it a small clay flask, stoppered with wax. He carries it as gently as a newborn babe. "'Tis holy water, and not common holy water, not the stuff any village priest will flick at you for a coin." He holds it up to the light from the door. This was drawn from the well of Saint Winifred herself, in the far country of Wales, at the very spring where the Blessed Maiden washed her holy hands, after her martyrdom and resurrection. And the water has run sweet and healing ever since. A monk sold it to me on the Chester Road. I could tell he was a holy man, as he was barefoot, with eyes like a saint in a window. Oh, how he wept to part with it. You look at the little flask held up beside the knight's shining, earnest face. You don't say anything to him about this, but you do find it suspicious. What are the odds of chancing across pious monks who happen to be carrying flasks of the rarest water in Christendom along the Chester Road, and who happen to meet a knight with a full purse? A swindling beggar is just as likely to be barefoot as an impoverished monk. But Sir Ludolf seems happy enough, and the water can do the iron no harm, so you spare his dignity. "And you would have me work the water into the shoe, my lord?" you ask, just to clarify. "Into the very forging of it. He is delighted, you understand. At each heat a little, so the blessing goes down into the iron and cannot be struck out of it. Under my horse's own hoof, Smith, do you see? He shall run on holy ground wherever he sets his foot." He beams and throws a look over his shoulder at his gleaming horse standing outside. "I will pay for the trouble, and pay well. A knight does not haggle." He names a sum of 10 silver. That is 5 times what the shoe is worth, and you gladly accept it. So you get started, and Sir Ludolf pulls up the one stool and sits, and does not stop talking from the first blow to the last. You have never in your life met a man so full of his own history. As you cut the bar and lay it in, he tells you of the boar he killed in the Duke's forest with a broken spear. A boar the size of a bullock, he says, that had gored 3 hounds and a huntsman, before Sir Ludolf took it in the eye at a dead run. As you draw the shoe out and begin to bend it to the curve, he tells you of the Saracen he fought and spared and converted, all in a single afternoon, in a land so hot the rivers ran dry at noon. You tip a few drops from the flask onto the hot iron between blows, and it hisses and steams, and he crosses himself and murmurs, well pleased, and moves on to the tourney at York, where he unhorsed 6 men before dinner, and would have unhorsed a 7th, but the fellow's nerve failed, and he withdrew. You say, "Is that so, my lord?" And, "A near thing, my lord." And, "God was with you, my lord," in the places where it sounds proper to, and you try not to betray a laugh while you shape the shoe. It is easy work, and you could do it in your sleep, which is well, for a good half of your attention is taken up with the tales, and with deciding which parts of each might have a grain of truth buried in them somewhere. And yet you find, to your own surprise, that you do not dislike him. There are men whose boasting is meant to make you feel small, and you have known enough of them to sense it. But Sir Ludolf's is not of that kind. He boasts the way a child sings, for the joy of the sound alone, and he wants nothing from you but that you share his good opinion of the world. He praises your work 3 times unasked. He makes much of Juno, and produces from somewhere in his satchel a heel of dried meat for her, which wins her entirely, so that she lies against his boot for the rest of the early afternoon. You sprinkle the last of the water at the final stage, dousing the shoe with a good splash, since there is no sense in leaving any in the flask, and it will please him to see it used. The shoe hisses and throws up a cloud of steam, and the forging is nearly done. Sir Ludolf rises from his stool and stands with his hands clasped and his eyes shut, and says a prayer that goes on somewhat longer than you would have thought a horseshoe required. You quench it and punch the nail holes, finish it and hand it to him cooled. He turns it in his big hands reverently. It has a look of grace about it, he pronounces. Do you not think so, Blacksmith? A certain light. To you, it simply looks like a horseshoe. It's a sound shoe, my lord. I'm honoured to have made it for your race, and it will serve you well for a good while after. It will carry me to victory, is what it will do, and I shall think of you, honest smith, in the moment of my triumph. He pays you the whole outrageous sum, and his armour clanks as he tucks the horseshoe into the satchel, and kneels down to bid Juno farewell. He goes outside and mounts his steed, thanking you again, and inviting you to come witness his horsemanship and valour in the races, as he rides off with the nightly clop-clop of his horse's hooves, sounding down the gravel path of your yard. You take a quick look up and down the road to see if any other customers are approaching. When you see none, you decide now would be a good time to take your midday meal and refresh yourself before the continuation of the day's work. You grab a handful of walnuts and a wedge of dry and sharp yellow cheese before heading out. You whistle for Juno, who comes bounding up to your heels. The two of you make the short trip towards an old apple tree, not too far off from the forge, whose shade provides an excellent reprieve from the midday sun and heat. With your back against the trunk, you have a rather excellent viewpoint of the village and the roads. Juno lies down with her head in your lap, tracking your hands with her intelligent eyes. She is hopeful that her intense staring might endear her to you further and earn her a share of the spoils. You crack the walnuts against the hard stone and cut bits off the cheese with your knife, giving every third piece to Juno, who takes it from your fingers gentle as a lamb. Much is happening in Redwycke at this hour, though most of it goes on behind doors. The ovens and the looms and the setting out of the midday meal, so that the street itself lies quiet. But for a few small doings a man may entertain himself with from under a tree. Down the way, a boy of some 15 years has draped himself over the fence of the butcher's yard, hard at work on the great trouble of his life, which is how he might win the good regard of Alice, the butcher's daughter. You happen to know it is a doomed labor, for Alice has told you so herself. She comes by the forge often to collect new meat hooks that her father had ordered. And being a good-natured and chatty girl, she had oft spoken of the fool who follows her day and night, to no avail. The boy waits for her to cross the yard, and when at last she does, with a pail in each hand and her chin very high, she passes him without a word. The boy winces, as though an almighty cart has just rolled by over his foot, crushing his toes and hopes alike. And up at the top of the square by the well, another man is having a worse day of it. A small crowd has begun to gather around a raised wooden platform to watch Simon Pike be clapped in the pillory. Pike has been a thorn in Redwycke a long while. He's deft and quick of hand, and quicker still to profusely deny all claims of his thefts, despite it being plain for all to see, and the sheer audacity to refute all evidence presented against him further enrages his victims. It seems his luck has failed him twice over in a single week. Beside the stocks stands Reeve Godfrey Tench, a burly man in his good russet market coat, with the Reeves chain of office bright on his chest. He has one hand gripping his belt by the hook of his thumb, and the other delightfully tugging at his beard. He claps his hands to quiet down the crowd's murmurs and clears his throat. Simon Pike was found with his hand in the purse of an honest grocer, and 3 good pennies of another man's silver in his fist. The crowd tuts and clicks, well satisfied. And that is the least of it. Tench lifts a hand for quiet. He's clearly having a very fine morning indeed, being the arbiter of justice. For this same fellow was caught 2 nights past, climbing out the window of Dietrich Brandt's house with his boots in his hand, and Brandt home an hour early from the river and seeing him go. And when honest Brandt went inside, there was his own wife abed, red as a beet, and not one word to account for herself. You can hear the howls and peals of laughter even from this far away. You hear one of the village women call out to ask which was the greater theft, the coin or another man's wife, which only makes the crowd laugh more. Tench gives a short, satisfied nod, well pleased with himself. Pike bears the ridicule and humiliation in relative silence. He is a lean, roguish-looking man of about 30, unshaven a fortnight, and his dark features betray nothing, giving his best impression of looking bored while a handful of the town laughs at him. A young boy runs in and throws a rotten onion which just misses his head and splatters unceremoniously across the wooden board, spraying the corner of Pike's face with stinking juice. You eat your walnuts and watch, and the half hour goes by quite nicely, all things considered. Then the shade shifts, and you think you ought to go back now. As you get to your feet, you brush the last of the crumbs down for Juno's benefit and make your way back to the yard and the forge. Upon arriving, you find somebody already waiting for you there. It is a young boy of about 17 or perhaps 18, with a mop of brown hair that is desperately asking for a barber. He is a thin lad, and it is clear he's not eaten as well as he should have in the past month. His clothes are muddied and worn, but even under the dirt, you can tell they are of good quality. And you see a fine sword belt at his hip, although there is no sword in it. You surmise that this young man is from a well-off family, who might have been noble at some point, but has fallen on dire times. He straightens up when he sees you, and an earnest sort of apprehension settles over his boyish face. When he speaks, his voice has the tenor of youth, but his words lack no conviction. "Are you the blacksmith, Tobias? I asked around at the alehouse and they said you might be of help to me. I'm not from around here, you see. I've come a long way and..." He catches himself rambling and stops and colours a little out of embarrassment. He takes a deep breath and raises his eyes to meet yours. "I am Tobias, you've not been misled, and I'll always hear out good work, let's have it," you say, and motion for him to step inside the forge. He lays a scroll out on your bench, unfurls it, and smooths it down with his palms. It is a set of plans for a handsome longsword, drawn by an expert hand, with every measure set down in a neat script. The boy waits patiently as you study the plans, then explains. "My father was a swordsmith, and he drew these up before forging the Carrow family sword. I am Gawain Carrow, the last survivor of the line." He says it with much pride, but you do not know the name. When he sees no recognition on your face, he lets it pass and continues. "Only ruin befell our fortress, and the sword was broken and the parts misplaced. I mean to have it reforged, true to my father's vision." You bend over the plans and read them properly. It has been a couple of months since anyone came to you wanting a sword, and longer still since one so grand. In a town that asks you for gate latches and horseshoes, a man near forgets he was trained for finer things. But fine things demand a pretty penny. You explain to Gawain that such a blade would cost him 3 gold and 2 silver, expecting him to balk at the price. But he nods his head and says that he has the coin, for his family had not left him entirely destitute. Then his shoulders come down out of their soldierly set, and he is only a tired boy again. "There is one problem. I have everything the sword calls for, all but a single piece that I do not possess, nor can it be made by you, and that is the pommel. My father's plans require the old Carrow pommel set atop it, the true one, with our tower cast into the metal. For it is the last piece left in all the world of our storied legacy. And everything else my family owned was lost when my family was. I spent nearly a year tracking that pommel from hand to hand, and I have found it at last. It is here, in Redwycke. held in the strong room of a moneylender and merchant by the name of Conrad Habicht. Now that is a name that you do know, and it makes you sympathize that much more with the boy's plight. There is no soul in Redwycke who has weathered a bad winter and not come to know Conrad, the Hollander who came to the town a score of years ago and has spent every year since growing fat on other folks' ruin. He lends out silver at a rate to make a bishop weep, and is quick to seize a man's goods and land whenever the debt falls due unpaid. If the Carrow pommel has come to rest in that house, you have a fair idea of the road it took to get there. Gawain shakes his head as he continues speaking. I went to him to buy it back, but having seen its true value and importance to me, the merchant increased its price tenfold on the spot. He savoured my inability to pay and sent me away as a beggar. He lifts his chin and looks at you squarely. So I will put it to you plainly. It is not only a sword that I am asking to be made. It is my father's pommel I mean to have back out of that man's clutches. And I know that a man of your trade has no shortage of lockpicks, nor does he lack the skill to use them. You work your jaw left and right, realizing that you are being asked to steal from a merchant's storeroom. You know full well that a wise man would send the lad off and keep his own neck clear of it. But Gawain has been done a great injustice, and you are of the opinion that stealing from a thief is no theft at all. So you decide to help the boy. You bid him to go wait at the alehouse for the day while you sort out the matter of the pommel. You gather a few of your finer tools, including several lockpicks, and stow them inside and across your blacksmithing apron. You leave Juno behind, as she would only draw unwanted attention to your presence. And you head up the road toward the square and the lane beyond, where Habicht keeps his house and shop. On the way, you happen to pass by the bathhouse. It sits close upon the road with the steam rolling out from under its eaves, and out the prop door in a warm grey breath, bringing with it the sweet-smelling herbs that they put in the water. And through the doorway, you can see into the dim, warm dark of it. There are several great wooden tubs sunk into the floor, with men to their chests in the steaming water. You see a fat wool merchant with his head tipped back and his eyes shut. And in the far corner, there are two of the Reeves men, laughing over cups of ale balanced on the rim, and a woman going among them with a pail, filling and topping the tubs. It is one of the girls who calls to you, leaning out of the door into the road. Her name is Rosa. She is a sweet young woman with dark eyes and lustrous hair. Her sleeves are shoved to the elbow and her bodice loosened against the wet heat. She gives you a smile and an energetic wave, signaling for you to approach. Tobias, now here's a man who's good with his hands. Come in and save us, will you, before we scald ourselves. You step in out of the road into the close dampness of the place, and she leads you back to the great copper that hangs over the fire, brimming and steaming. The trouble is plain enough once you see it. The iron bale of the copper, which is the great looped handle they lift and tip it by, has torn half loose at one side. The rivet worked open with long use, so that the handle swings by the one arm only, and the entire scalding weight of the vessel is a hair from tipping into the fire, or onto whoever stands nearest. None of us dare touch it, Rosa says. And there's a room full of men wanting hot water, and me carrying it the long way round by the small pot like a fool. You can fix it surely, can't you? It is a quick thing to mend temporarily. You let the copper cool a little off the flames and take the loosened rivet and set it right again, with a few careful taps of the small hammer from your apron, closing the iron back down over it until the bale sits properly on both arms once more and will bear the weight. You give it a pull to prove it, and it holds. You give Rosa an easy smile. There you go. It'll want a proper rivet cold set when the fire's out. Come by the forge sometime and I'll do it right, but it'll serve a day or two. You're a gift from God, and no mistake. She looks you over thoughtfully. So, what do we owe you? A wash, at the least, and whatever else you'd have. Visit the bathhouse tonight, when you've shut the forge, and let us thank you proper-like. It is tempting, but before you indulge her, another idea springs to mind. There is no one Conrad Habicht would more readily open his door to than a comely woman. And every girl in this house has cause to wish the old miser ill, for he is free with his hands and close with his purse, and pays poorly for what he takes, and takes more than he pays for. Rosa could stand at his counter and hold his attention as long as ever you needed, and count it a pleasure to get back at the old goat. Actually, there is a way you could repay me, you tell her, and pay back a certain grasping old customer of yours at the same stroke. Step out to the road with me a moment, where the whole bathhouse can't hear. You tell her what you need, and it is simple enough. That she go to Conrad's shop as any customer might, and pass a good long while browsing his soaps and his herbs and his pitchers for the bathhouse, asking this and that and settling on nothing, only to hold the old man's attention at the front of the house as long as ever she can, while you find your way to the strong room by the side. She goes off ahead to be seen going in at the front, while you take the back lanes, so none should see the two of you walking together. Habicht's house is the finest on its street and the meanest in spirit. A tall, narrow place of good stone, with the shutters half drawn against the day, as though the light itself were a thing worth hoarding. He keeps his shop in the front rooms and his strong room behind. You wait in the alley at the back until you hear Rosa's voice raised bright and pleasant, and the old man's dry answers, and then her asking after this soap and that. Was the lavender dearer than the rose? And where did the rose come from? And had he nothing softer for the ladies who like to be pampered on and on, until you could almost pity him? Then you go to work. The back storeroom door is locked, but it is only a simple lock, which is rather poor security for a man so fond of his silver, and no match for a smith. You pull out a lockpick from within the folds of your apron. It is a thin, filed length of iron you keep for jammed chests and lost keys and other honest troubles that people come to you with. You feel your way past the wards, turning and listening through your fingers until it gives and the bolt draws back. From inside comes Rosa's laugh and the old man's voice, unalarmed. You ease the door open and slip through. The strong room is close and windowless, and it is quite crammed with all manner of goods. Chests along the floor, ledgers stacked to the ceiling, shelves crowded with plate and cups and candlesticks. Most of the items in clear view are clearly the ordinary day-to-day stock of a merchant. He must keep the more valuable items acquired by dubious means inside the chests. The first one you open contains nothing more than a few ornate chalices and some precious rosaries. The second chest has a collection of books. There is a substantial layer of dust coating them. You suspect that Conrad has had some difficulty in selling them, owing to the fact that the majority of your village does not read. It is in the third chest that you find a variety of metals and materials. You know the pommel the moment your fingers close on it. It is 8-sided and very heavy for its size. It is made of immaculate steel, and worked into one face of it is the mark of the Carrow House. You run your thumb along the tall round tower, crenellated along its top like the battlements of a keep. You can see why Gawain treasured it so. It is a beautiful piece of family history. Having found what you came for, you slide it into the front pocket of your apron and slip out quietly through the door. Once you make it down a good stretch of the road, away from Conrad's shop, you allow yourself to turn and look back. You spot Rosa coming down the same way, heading back towards the bathhouse. As she passes you, she gives you a mischievous wink that tells you she'd waste his afternoon again tomorrow, just for the joy of it. The forge is quiet and empty when you come back to it, for you had sent Gawain off some hours since, with word to return on the morrow. The forging of the blade will take up the remainder of the day, so you'll take on no more customers. You close the yard door and bar it. You lay the plans flat on a nearby bench and weight the corners flat with 2 horseshoes on either side. Then study them a while in the failing light before you lay so much as iron to the fire. You choose your steel with care, using the best of what you have on hand. Once the fire is roaring high, you begin. The making of a blade is a long courtship of the metal, a very delicate dance of fire and force. You heat the bar and draw it under the hammer, working the length of it out slowly and evenly, turning it, reading the plans and reading the steel, matching one to the other. The blade takes its shape by degrees. You watch with a master's eye as the flat of it widens and the taper runs true from the shoulders to the point. The light in the doorway goes from amber to red to the deep blue of the evening while you work. You pound out the shallow groove that runs the center of the blade to lighten it without robbing its strength. Then it's time for the bevels, working the edges down fine on either side, and drawing out the tang at the base where the grip and the guard will sit. At the end of it, you bring the whole length to an even glowing heat, watching the color down its edge and judging it by eye as your book taught you. And your years taught you better. And when it is right, you take it up and plunge it down into the long trough. The water roars and throws up a great gout of steam that stings your face. You hold the blade under the water for some time, then draw it out and set it to the light. It is straight and sound, with no crack nor warp in all its length. And you let yourself feel the joyous pride of your work. With the blade hardened and tempered sound, there is only the crossguard and the fitting of the pommel left. You slot the crossguard over the tang, where it meets the shoulders of the blade, snug and square. Then the grip, which is a core of wood shaped to the hand and bound tight, seated down against the guard. And last of all, the pommel. You take it up from where it has sat waiting on the bench and pass it through to be seated down against the grip. You heat the very end of the tang and set it on the anvil and peen it over, hammering the hot iron and spreading it against the crown of the pommel, with little careful blows until it is locked fast and immovable. When it cools, you turn the sword over in your hands. The carrow tower sits atop the blade once more, and it is a beauty to behold. You understand why men have loved these things enough to die holding them. There is only the matter of sharpening the edge left. You bear it to the grindstone in the corner and work the treadle with your foot, and bring the wheel up to a steady turn. You lay the blade to the stone and watch the sparks fan off in a bright hissing arc into the dark of the forge. As you draw it along its length, one side and then the other, over and over, coaxing the edge up from heel to point. Juno wakes at the noise, her ears perking up. She watches a while before dipping her head back into sleep. When you are done, you wipe the blade clean and give it a couple of test swings. Truly a masterful work that you could not be more proud of. And you reckon that Gawain will be well pleased too. It is now deep in the evening. You stand the sword against the wall, where you will attend to it first thing in the morning. You stretch the ache from your back and shoulders, and you think that a man who has made a day like this one has fairly earned a drink among good company before he seeks his bed. Pulling the door shut behind you, you step out into the dark. Night has closed over Redwycke while you worked, and you set off up the road toward the square, with the hardened mud cracking under your boots. You are not the only one abroad. Many others are making the evening's pilgrimage to the alehouse too, and their lanterns swing yellow at their sides, and throw your own shadow long and wheeling across the ruts. And ahead of you, one big fellow carries a pitch torch shoulder high that gutters and streams, and drops the sharp stink of tar back into your face as you follow it up the hill toward the noise. The alehouse stands where the western road meets the square, with light spilling from its open door and its windows out across the ground before it. A few tables stand out front, and even in the night chill, some men are still at them, hunched over a game of dice by the light of a lantern set on the boards. One of them curses as the dice fall against him and shakes his purse to show he is good for another round. Upon entering, the heat and the din embrace you at once. There are far more bodies here tonight than a common evening brings. And half the faces are strange to you, drawn in by the racing over at the meadows, which has done wonders for Redwycke's alehouse. You're sure innkeep Bertram is glad of the coin. Even as you press in through the door, you catch sight of Sir Ludolf across the room, planted by the fire with a cup in his fist, and his arm thrown wide, deep in the telling of some tale. And though you cannot hear a word of it over the noise, you would put good coin on it being that same story of the boar that he regaled you with earlier that day. He raises his tankard in greeting to you, nonsensically drunk. You make your way in to where innkeeper Bertram is working the barrels. A great slab of a man, filling jug after jug, and handing them off to the girl who serves the tables, quick as he can pour. He knows you well, and when you catch his eye, he tips his head toward the stew pot, hung by the fire to tell you to help yourself. You ladle a bowl full of the thick, dark mutton swimming with barley. You bring it back to Bertram and lay a penny on the barrel head, and he draws you a tankard of ale for it, and is on to the next man before your coin has stopped ringing. Then you take your supper off to one side, to one of the stout posts that hold up the low roof, and set your shoulder against it, so you can eat and watch the room both at once. Not far off, you catch sight of Rosa, sat with one of the other girls from the bathhouse. The two of them with their heads together over their ale, and plainly trying to have an evening to themselves for once, to gossip and drink and be let alone, after a long day of managing the wants of men. But the men, of course, have followed them here. 3 of them hover at the bench, none willing to be the first to give it up. You recognize one of the Reeves' hired men, the cobbler's son, and a stranger dressed up in his racing finery, which he surely thinks is very impressive. The 2 women handle them between themselves without breaking their own conversation. A raised brow for the one, a laugh soft enough to keep the cobbler's boy hoping, a scathing look for the stranger. Then Rosa lifts her eyes over the whole business and finds you across the room, and gives you a small smile, just for you. You think about going over. Then you think better of it, for the woman has 3 men too many at her bench already, and has earned better than a 4th. And you lift your jug to her an inch off your chest instead, and leave her to her hard-won peace. You look about for Gawain, half expecting to find him somewhere in the crowd, and do not, and after a moment's thought you are glad of it. By now, Conrad Habicht will have gone to his strong room and found his back door has had its lock picked. And if he were to take stock to see what was taken, he'd find one of the chests a pommel lighter. A man like that will have been to the Reeve already, crying robbery to anyone who will hear him. And should those men come asking who was new in Redwycke and what business had brought him, a friendless boy asking after that very same pommel would be the first name they landed on. Far better he keep to his rented room above, out of the light and the talk, and let the night pass him by. You take a pull of your ale and hope the lad has the sense to stay put, and think that he has. Off in the corner, well into his cups by now, is Osbert Reed. All the sourness he carries about the town by day has drained out of him with the ale, and he stands swaying gently on his feet, with an arm slung round the shoulders of a man he has likely never met before tonight. As you watch, he throws his head back and breaks into song, some old tune you have known since you were a boy, with more verses than any man can rightly recall, and not one of them fit for the priest's ears. And at the top of his voice he bellows out, "Oh, the miller's wife, she baked me bread, and kneaded my dough with a will. She worked it and rolled it the whole night through, and rose me at dawn for more still." His companion tries to join him and cannot keep up, for Osbert has forgotten half the words, and makes up the rest as he goes, and the men around him roar the chorus back at him. You find yourself smiling into your jug at the sight of the town's dourest carter turned troubadour, on a bellyful of Bertram's ale. You stay against the post a long while, in no haste to move. Every soul in this room is living out some story of their own tonight, and it makes you happy to know that you have had a hand in several of them. Bertram starts telling people to clear off. You finish your ale and set the jug on the shelf at your shoulder, and lean there a moment longer in the warmth and the din. And there is nowhere on God's earth you would rather be standing. By and by, the alehouse begins to empty, the drinkers trickling out into the night, one and two at a time. Some steady enough and some not. One poor soul weaving off to face a wife, who will have plenty to say to him. Another giving up the walk entirely, to bed down in a neighbour's yard. You make your own way back down the western road to the forge, sound on your feet and easy in your mind, and climb the stair to your bed above the shop, and sleep the good hard sleep of a day well spent, knowing there will be more of them yet for the Blacksmith of Redwycke, and more tales to come with the morning. And that, my dear friends, is the end of tonight's adventure. I hope you enjoyed this kind of day in the life POV, kind of quest-style story. I mean, I really do think it ended up being a mix of both. So if you enjoyed this, please let me know down in the comments. I would love to write more. There are so many different adventures you could go on, and things to do as a medieval blacksmith. But until next time, stay safe and sweet dreams.